Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week in interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. I hope you're having a great week so far. We are just barreling through 2026. This is the first episode in August. 8 months have already blown by in 2026. And there's just so much happening. There's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot happening in the Caribbean. There's so much happening in Dominica that we all just gaze in wonder, as the Dominican anthem says. We gaze in wonder because as soon as one development is digested or half digested, a second one comes up. And so, folks, today we are going to play literary experts or literary enthusiasts, and we're going to combine two of my favorite topics. One of them being literary, a book, and the other one being politics slash social commentary, criticism, suggestions. You know, the Caribbean has been plagued with years of what, in my opinion, is ineffective leadership on so many fronts. So much so that the Caribbean people, for the last few decades, have been scrambling to get out of the Caribbean to go into somebody else's country to help build their country. It's crazy. When you go to the Caribbean, you recognize that we own the best, hands down, the best portion of real estate on the planet. We have friendly climate, fertile soil, fresh air, lots of water, energy in the air that really contributes to a quality of life. We reside in a part of the on the earth that doesn't require much resources to have a quality of life that rivals people in other societies that have to be millionaires or billionaires. Our lifestyle in the Caribbean is what people from other countries do when they're on vacation. We do it in our everyday life. Wake up in the morning, do some work, go to the ocean, have a bath, fresh fruits, fresh water. But yet still, our people in the Caribbean for decades have been scrambling to get out of the Caribbean because of lack of opportunity for themselves and for their children. And it has been increasingly so. that we see our islands and our countries being slapped around and being disrespected. Folks who can just walk into our country with minimal identification are requiring us to jump through hoops to get into their countries. We see our leaders basically kowtowing to leaders of other countries, saying, if you don't help us, we cannot survive. If not for your help, we cannot recover from hurricanes. We are surrounded by oceans, but we have no technology that really utilizes the resources of the ocean. And so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how do we extract ourselves, and of course, art and culture is a way that any society can lift itself out of where it is. So tonight, I invited my good friend and brother, Mr. Alvin Thomas, to join me so that we could talk about a very classic fable that was first published in the year 1837. And that classic is called The Emperor's New Clothes. Most of us are familiar with the story, or we may have heard the phrase that the emperor has no clothes without necessarily reading the story. And so I want to present that story to you tonight. And then Alvin and I are going to do an examination, an exploration of that story. Because we are storytelling people. We grew up with Compelapin, Compoitig, Baranansi, and so on. Our African heritage has passed down to us stories, and we learn and thrive on stories. So I am going to maybe what I do is introduce Alvin first, and then I'm going to play. I found the recording of the story online. It's only about 8 minutes long, but I want to play it for everybody to refresh your minds about the story. It has a little slightly, it has some slight variation from the original because it was reimagined for children, but it has the gist of the story. Let's listen to it, and then we are going to try to see if we can make some comparisons. Alvin, before we go to that, let me not keep you in the backstage. Let me give you a chance to say welcome to you, and for me to say welcome to you. And as usual, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yes, Tony, let me say a pleasant good evening to you and your team, your production team at tdnradio.net, this week in interview. And to say a special good evening as well to all your listeners who have tuned in, those who've been there before, who comes in regularly every week, and those who are coming on for their first time this Wednesday. It's always humbling for me and a privilege as well to be able to share that platform with you and to have some discourse, um, touching on the issues that affect our lives as Caribbean people, as Black people. We just coming out, what, 3 days now, maybe, the celebration of emancipation. And I was sort of, reminiscing on that and saying to our young people today, the young 20-year-old, 30-year-old, even understand the significance of that holiday, emancipation. And it's branded about. I mean, you had um, throughout the region. I saw the Prime Minister of Trinidad gave an address in observance of emancipation, which I find was quite profound. But generally across the region, I mean, nobody, young people in particular, I would say, and maybe some of the older ones too, I will admit, don't pay much attention to that. So it's always enlightening that we can come and have those kind of conversation, and hopefully it will bring about some change, because that is the objective, though, not just to talk for the sake of talking, but that somebody will be able to um, take that information, in particular those of us Dominicans back home, and bring about the most needed change that is required in the country at this point in time. So a pleasure to be back with you again, Tony, and look forward to a really stimulating and engaging conversation this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to make for a pretty good conversation. I hope the audience, I hope you participate with your comments. We will take up as many of them as we can. As you listen to the story, let's try to keep the different characters in our mind: the emperors, the swindlers, the courtsmen or advisors, the elites of society, and so on, and the role that each one of them play. Because after we listen, we are going to see if we can match different rules in our modern day 2026 Dominica and the Caribbean. So let's take a pause. It's going to be about 8 minutes. It will feel a little long because in a forum like this, but I think it will keep your interest, and then we're going to have a really lively discussion. So welcome everyone, and let's do this.
Once upon a time, there was an emperor. He had a big, round belly, bushy eyebrows, and a very long moustache. But he was very vain. All he thought about was himself.
"I am so wonderful," he would say. "Look at my wonderful eyebrows. Look at my excellent moustache. I look marvelous."
The emperor loved to wear fancy clothes. He had 400 fancy shirts, 300 pairs of fancy pants, and 1,000 pairs of fancy socks. The emperor also loved to say fancy words, like
empirical, cantankerous, discombobulate.
He didn't know what the fancy words meant, but he liked to say them anyway. He liked to sound intelligent.
"I am so intelligent," he said. "I am a genius."
I know you'll have a blast. Hey, look! Another egg! Well, what are we waiting for? It's hatching time! How many munchkins are there? Click here to answer and hatch more pets yourself on...
One day, a man arrived at the palace. He said that he was a tailor. He said he could make the fanciest clothes in the land. But really, this man was a dishonest man. He earned his money by fooling rich people. The tailor brought the emperor 10 suitcases.
"Your most majestic and intelligent majesty," he said. "Everybody knows that you are the most intelligent man in the world. And I've created some amazing new clothes. These clothes are only for intelligent people. In fact, stupid people cannot even see these clothes."
The emperor clapped his hands.
Amazing! With these clothes, I can know who is smart and who is stupid. I will never be bothered by idiots again.
"Let me try these clothes."
The tailor undressed the emperor until he stood only in his underpants. He unpacked his tape measure. He measured the emperor's arms, legs, shoulders, and all around his big, round belly. The tailor reached inside one of the suitcases.
No, this one is too big. No, this one is too small. Ah, this one is perfect."
He pretended to lift a shirt out of the suitcase.
"What do you think?"
said the tailor. The emperor gasped. He could not see anything.
"Isn't it wonderful?" said the tailor. "And remember, only intelligent people will be able to see it."
The tailor reached into his suitcase again.
"Look at these pants. Aren't they beautiful? And they are completely invisible to idiots. And look at this jacket. See the colors? A complete nincompoop will see absolutely nothing."
Oh, yes, very nice,"
stammered the emperor. But he was confused. Why couldn't he see the clothes? "Surely it's not possible that I am an idiot," he thought. "A complete moron would not know fancy words like vestibule, crepuscular,
Flippity-gibbet."
But the emperor said nothing. The tailor pretended to dress the emperor in the invisible shirt, pants, jacket, and shoes. The emperor stood in front of the mirror. He wanted to see the clothes, but all he saw was his big, round belly and his underpants.
"I'm not sure that it's really my style," said the emperor. "But let me get a second opinion."
The emperor called 3 of his most intelligent friends into the room.
"Friends, what do you think of these new clothes? Only intelligent people can see these clothes. Stupid people see nothing at all."
Of course, his friends didn't see anything either, but they did not want to look stupid.
"Oh, yes, that is a great shirt,"
said the first friend.
"Yes, the pants are the perfect color,"
said the second friend. Cool shoes, said the third friend. The emperor was excited. I will wear these new clothes in the parade tomorrow. The emperor gave the tailor a lot of money. The tailor left the palace with 10 suitcases full of gold. When he was safely in his carriage, he laughed long and hard.
What a doofus!
That night, the emperor did not sleep. He stayed up late, reading the biggest, heaviest books in his library. I just need a few more fancy words. Then I'll be able to see my clothes, he thought. In the morning, 2 servants came to the emperor's room to dress him for the parade. Of course, they couldn't see any clothes either, but they said nothing. They did not want to look stupid. They pretended to dress the emperor in invisible pants, invisible shirt, invisible jacket, and an invisible hat. The emperor looked at himself in the mirror. He stared and he squinted. He turned his head left and right. And, wait, there it was. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw a slight shimmering fabric, a checkered pattern, a tiny bit of color. He could see the clothes. In reality, there were no clothes, but we often see what we want to see. The emperor was happy that he could finally see the clothes.
Let's join the parade,
He shouted. Everybody from the town was at the parade. All the intelligent people were there. All the scientists, all the writers, all the teachers, and all the children. The emperor stood in his open carriage and waved to the crowd. But as the emperor's carriage drove down the street, the crowd fell silent. The music stopped. Everybody stared at the emperor.
These clothes must be amazing,
thought the emperor. But then, from the back of the crowd, a small child yelled,
Mummy, I can see his underpants.
Everybody gasped. Then there were a few giggles. And then everyone on the street laughed and laughed and laughed even harder. They clapped and shouted,
Underpants! Underpants!
The emperor heard the crowd laugh. He knew he had been fooled. He wasn't wearing special clothes. He was wearing nothing. Only his underpants. He jumped out of the carriage and ran all the way back to the palace. Behind him, he heard,
Underpants! Underpants!
He ran to his bedroom and slammed the door. Later, when his friends found him, he was lying on his bed. He was wearing all his real clothes, all his fancy shirts, all his fancy pants, and all 1,000 pairs of fancy socks.
Um, that's the story of the emperor's new clothes. It has a slightly different ending or an alternate ending, but in essence, it it has survived for hundreds of years because of the simplicity of the story, but the profoundness of the message in that story. We experience so many situations where, just like the emperor, people pretend for people in power because they're afraid to lose status. People in power who are vain and proud get taken advantage of by swindlers and conmen because they are so vain, they want to maintain a certain air of intelligence, a certain air of knowledge and sophistication. And so an intelligent person with nefarious intentions can take advantage of that. The first thing that the tailor said to the emperor is that you are the most intelligent and most majestic person on earth. And right away when he said that, he already had the emperor on his fingers. And so, Alvin, I wanted to bring that story up and to discuss it because in the last several weeks, many what would appear to be unintelligent decisions by the government of Dominica have been surfacing. And so many of them are so egregious, but yet still there are so many so-called academics and intellectuals that go to great length to defend those situations. So that brought that story to mind. But before we launch into specifics, I'm going to give you an opportunity to just talk in general about the story that we just heard. In the meantime, I encourage those of you in the audience, good night again, to type in your comments what situations you think that happened recently in the Caribbean that demonstrates some kind of an illusion and people seeing things and saying that they see things that are not actually there. But Alvin, give me your general comments about the story.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Well, very interesting approach to this evening's conversation, which I think is quite timely, as you have just laid out the framework and with your comments. It's interesting, though, that story was written almost 200 years ago.
1857.
1837, 189 years ago, almost 200 years, by Hans Christian Andersen. And it's interesting that we are here this evening doing, using the story as it was an allegory to describe the current political maneuvers and climate in the region, and in particular in Dominica. As you rightly pointed out, the story of itself tells of an emperor who becomes obsessed with appearance and one might put in there as well power. For now, we'll put political on the side, but obsessed with appearance and power, and commission to, one might call them swindlers, because that's basically the manner in which they operated. One could describe them as swindlers, to make him magnificent clothes. And they claim that the garment that they're preparing for him possesses a certain amount of magical quality that are invisible to anyone who is incompetent or untrustworthy to the office. And you hear in the story, he talks about using those big words. We will relate that a little later, as we say, but we know exactly where that goes. You have situations where folks are referred to as Dr. this and Dr. that, and sort of bowing and fearful of being exposed as unfit. The emperor, those around him, sees the non-existence of the garment. So they're seeing there isn't really a garment, but they're saying yes, there is a garment. That's how they operate. And eventually the emperor himself, although he sees nothing, but he also pretends to admire the clothes and goes out there as the emperor. And the entire society joins in that deception. So again, we'll make some parallels. So you have situation where, again, maybe we don't want to jump the gun, but the judiciary in Dominica, the institutions, everybody sees nothing wrong with the emperor not wearing the clothes. And not until an innocent child cries out, that one voice cries out and say, hey, but he isn't wearing anything at all. He's naked. And then the rest of the society or the audience start coming to some sort of realization. So if we were to apply that to one might say to governance in the broad sense of it, each character in the story, the child, the emperor, the swindlers, the advisors, remember he called it 3 advisors, and they seen what's supposed to be truth, they seen, but for fear of saying anything to the emperor, they say nothing, and they say yes, he has no clothes. So each character represents what one might say a recurring institutional challenge, put it this way. That's what comes out of it. Now, the emperor, again, bear in mind, as we said, the emperor himself symbolizes what one would say political leadership that become insulated from criticism and therefore increasingly concerned with maintaining appearance rather than addressing the realities that face the citizens. So even when he goes out there on that big parade, the realities is still not striking the citizen. They all seeing what makes the emperor happy and not seeing the reality of the situation. Not until this one child in the crowd cried out, hey, this guy has no clothes on him.
Guy has no clothes.
Okay? Now, the swindlers, as I would put it, so the folks who the emperor gave that to prepare that magnificent clothes for him, symbolizes those who exploit political system for their personal gain, because that's what they were. They know what is true, but here they were looking at their own personal interests to satisfy the emperor. Okay, we refer to those as the advisors.
The
advisors. That's right. The
right?
advisors, quote unquote. And then now, the crowd symbolizes society's willingness to remain silent despite private doubt. So here you have this whole crowd seeing what they're seeing, but chose to remain silent. Okay. Again, we'll relate that in this current day situations from a political standpoint, but they remain silent. Okay. The child, as I indicated earlier, represent that independent voice. And we could expand that to say that independent voice would be the voices of the citizen. Let's juxtapose that to Gregor Nassif, what's happening now back in D, and we'll talk about that. We'll relate that. That is that child now saying, Emperor, you're naked. The journalists, the academics, the civil society organizations, the churches, the trade unions, you might say, the judiciary, who are willing to state uncomfortable truth based on evidence rather than political convenience. So that is my take from it. As we discussed this evening, we'll show whether there are any lessons in that story for Dominica in terms of the current political trajectory, and what could likely be the real danger of our current leadership taking on that posture like this emperor in new clothes. And maybe we will just conclude by, what are some of concluding reflection and what positive message there might be in terms of a positive democratic message that we can take out of that story that would, as I said earlier, we are here to provide information, and hopefully that information would allow folks to take some action. I see Didi make a point there, which I agree to. The last line she says, in a nutshell, it's a collective illusion where people are too afraid to speak truth to power. Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what the story is.
That is one of that's one of the positions. But Alvin, thank you for that. Really wrapping our hands around the story and setting the stage for us to really transpose that story from 1837 all the way to present day 2026. Before I jump in, I think it's a good time to take our commercial break. It's 8:34.
Wow, that was quick.
So that when we come back, we can go uninterrupted into making the analogies and seeing how relevant that story is to what's going on in current day Caribbean and Dominica. So let's take our commercial break now.
Yeah.
Presented by. People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
All right, so welcome back. Thanks for staying with us for the break. If you joined us a little late, what we are doing tonight is we are using a story from 1837 that spoke about a very arrogant and prideful, a vain emperor that convinced himself that he was so intelligent and so smart that he allowed himself to fall into a trap where people was able to use that belief in himself to trick him. And because he was the emperor, that trick trickled down through his advisors, his most intelligent friends, into society, all the professionals, and into the community, until someone who maybe was a little bit unaware of potential consequences revealed what everybody knew to be the truth, right? And so we are looking at that story tonight, and we're going to take it directly into Dominica. My guest tonight is Alvin, of course, Alvin Thomas. And because our time is limited, we are going to just position some things on the table. In my opinion, the invisible clause, the parallel to that is when you listen to so many of the supporters of the incumbent government in Dominica, some of them tell you that the current prime minister of Dominica is the best prime minister in the Caribbean, that he's the best prime minister in history. That if it's not he to lead the country, who else can lead the country? And at first, you would think that they're just doing that so that they can justify their support for the party and for the government. But after a while, you come to realize that in their minds, most of them genuinely believe that. You also have a few professionals who constantly write articles in the media supporting one position or another of the government. What is truly absent from the social and political environment in Dominica is any type of criticism or disapproval of any position, any action whatsoever that this government takes. No matter what the outcome of a decision is, you have these folks who have gone to school for years, 4 years bachelor's, 2 years master's, another 2.5, 3 years to get a doctorate, and yet still they sacrifice their professional integrity to support some things that are indefensible. And what are some of those things that are indefensible? We don't have to go very far. There are a number of projects going on in Dominica right now. There's the rebuilding of the grammar school that suddenly collapsed, the roof collapsed on one of the sections of it. We've never seen a report to say why it collapsed, what caused it, and to assure the public that the remainder of the construction at that site is sound. We have the geothermal project, which has taken over 10 years to construct and hundreds of millions of dollars, that is now handed to an operator that's going to operate it for 25 years before the country is going to get revenue from it. And we see the fiasco that's happening in terms of bringing that plant on stream. And in the process of bringing that plant, it seems like they've done harm to the hydro project because nobody is mentioning the hydro facility in Dominica anymore. They talk about the generators that are being serviced and the geothermal, that when it goes offline, there's the nationwide blackout. So what's going on with the hydroelectric plant? We don't know. My assumption is that it is now an insignificant part of the supply of electricity. Of course, lately we've heard that the government signed a contract with the developers of the tramway that has um, footings in our forests, some of the most valuable aspect of Dominica, our UNESCO World Heritage Site, and with the views of our waterfalls, our lakes, our boiling lake, freshwater lake, and so on. And the government has signed that away to a company for 999 years. Yes, you heard me. 900
They recently said they amended it.
and 99 years. That's what they signed. Whether they amend it or not, they did not. That was what they signed because they only would have amended it after it was brought to the public. But even if you amend it for 99 years, why would you give someone a contract for 99 years on the best part, the most valuable part of your country? Why would you give control to foreigners of that, whether it's 99 years or 999 years, especially when the money for that project came from the sale of Dominican passports? There is the international airport. I'm not one of those that think it will not be completed. I think it will be completed, but I think it's a foolhardy project. Or how can an international airport be worth the number of mountain tops that's been flattened, the number of rivers that's being affected, our coastline that's being affected, and it is being done in the most disastrous manner for the environment. We see mining at Debonch. And in all of those instances that I have cited, and I have not even spoken about the Citizen by Investment program, all of those instances that I have cited, the only conclusion that a reasonable person can come to is that those decisions were foolish decisions on behalf of the government. They were decisions that were not thought of properly. They were decisions that we have no idea what the outcome is. They are decisions that show no type of concrete mathematical return, not even an estimate, not even an attempt of an estimate of what is going to be the benefit for the country in any, not one of those projects. And so, and in that light, we've not seen not one engineer who's a supporter of the government, not one finance person, not one medical person come out and mention that there is any potential of of an adverse effect on the environment, an adverse effect on the economy, an adverse effect on the on how do you call it, the equity of us as Dominicans. And so in my mind, the emperor's clothes in Dominica is this illusion that we have a genius in charge of Dominica and that this government is just so competent and they're making such good strides after 26 years in office. And that is the close. And the supporters of the incumbent government is refusing that to say what they believe. In a sense, what the direct translation that I see is an abandonment of truth. These folks are not willing to speak what they see as the truth. Instead, they rather to look at what is going on and say, oh, wow, the emperor has a nice scarf. Look at those beautiful pants. Look at how sharp his shoes are. When in fact they're seeing none of those things. Why is there an abandonment to our commitment to truth? So Alvin, that's why
Yes.
I want to bring it.
All right.
In
Okay.
my opinion, the government has made, some people might call it missteps. I call it foolish and unintelligent decisions that they've made. That's my opinion. And we don't see that outcry in the professionals, in the elites, in the career people who have expertise in those areas, except for a few of our children, Janelle Brisbane and Ogis, just very, very apt in terms of what we see going on.
Okay. So Tony, you have really painted it and highlighted quite a few of the projects in Dominica in relation to the emperor's new clothes. So again, let's just go back and this time now we will try to make the correlation to the story and what is happening back home in Dominica. So again, just to reiterate, the Emperor's New Clothes is one of the most enduring political allegories ever written. And like you said, it was written almost 200 years ago. Some of us may have forgotten it. Some of us read it as young folks in school. And I'm sure those listening will say, oh, yeah, I remember that story. Oh, that's what the story really means. So let me try and put it together in as best as layman terms and kind of related to what I would say the governance. Although it is, as we said, it's a children's fable, it has long been used to illustrate what one might say the dangers of unchecked power. Groupthink, political patronage, fear of speaking the truth, and the erosion of public accountability. All of this could fall into the areas that you just outlined. As an allegory, it can provide a powerful framework for discussing governance in the Commonwealth of Dominica, which is what we are attempting to do this evening, provided it represents a metaphor for governance principle, rather than a literal assertion about any individual or institution. So let's now try to dig deeper and to I use the allegory applied to governance. So let's start with the emperor, the first character, the main character, the how this we would say the hero in the
Starring.
movie. The starring. You know, because they like to be starring, you know. So even back in Dominica, we know the prime minister liked to be the starring. He called himself the world boss.
Yep.
And all other sorts of names.
And he run things.
And I run things. And you know, so the emperor there symbolizes political leadership that becomes insulated from criticism and increasingly concerned with maintaining appearance rather than addressing the realities facing citizens. Can we see any semblance of that in our leadership back home? Someone who becomes insulated from criticism, and if you say anything about him, you get in his bad books, or he's concerned about how he looks and what he says, and folks have to go there and remember to refer as the Right Honorable Doctor, all the names, the accolade, because the average citizen do not have doctors and Right Honorable behind their name. Excessive concentration of political power. You go to a press conference, there is something on agriculture, he speaks. Public works, he speaks. Health, he speaks. And all the ministers sit there, you know. The Minister of Health is sitting right there, and he dare not open his mouth and speak to his ministry, given the fact that he carries that instrument of appointment from the president and is responsible for that ministry. Okay? Personality driven leadership. We speak about world boss and all this type of stuff. Prioritizing image over measurable outcomes. So it's all about the image. It's all about, I heard a statement made the other day. Free up, scary man. Free up the man. Free me up. I should be getting more paid than the average because I do more work. The image. And believing instead of believing praise instead of objective criticism. So that's the emperor. That's the picture we have. Okay. And the question we pose tonight, does any of that relates to the leadership we have currently? Someone who believes in praise instead of objective evidence, prioritizing image over measurable outcomes, personality driven. Now let's shift gears and go to the swindlers, who are the folks who were given the two guys who were the weavers to prepare the garment for the emperor. And they symbolize those who exploit political system for personal gain. And that you see a lot. On this program, I have said repeatedly, and you've heard that. I'm sure you heard that from your dear mom who passed. Si pani sutiwe pani vole. You've heard that. You've heard old people say, si pani sutiwe pani vole. And if a matter is brought before the court, the judge wants to hear, well, as much as the person who committed the crime, he wants to hear, was there Alvin pushing on Tony to commit the crime? Okay? These are the swindlers. In a governance context, they represent corruption. Because that's what these guys were doing. They were giving the emperor impression that they're making him new clothes, when in fact, there was no new clothes. Opportunistic advisors. Contractors benefiting from weak oversight. You talk about the grammar school. You talk about the various projects. In the letter just written by Greg Nassif, he mentioned several major projects, the marina and all these projects that have not passed through any, planning approval, okay? Oversight. Individuals who manipulate institutions for financial or political advantage. These are the weavers, the swindlers you refer to. And we see that today in Dominica's context, that there are those folks who manipulate the institutions for financial and political gains, so they can get favor with the emperor, all right? Their greatest weapon is not necessarily deception itself, but persuading others that questioning them carries personal risk. So you have the people like the Clarence Christian, that if you, on our program, he challenged me a while back when we were speaking about the CBI, and we invited him to come right there. Come, let's have a conversation. He and I, you will be the host. But these are what they are, okay? Then we move to the advisors, who the three advisors that were called in by the emperor. And these can be looked at as the ministers in the cabinet, because that's what they're there for. They are ministers, and they're responsible for their portfolio. But these figures represent institutions whose constitutional duty is to provide oversight, but which instead becomes compliant. They are constitutionally appointed. This would also apply to public officers, permanent secretaries. They have a constitutional obligation. And what this allegory raises, the question, is whether we have Parliament effectively scrutinize the executive. So you have within the cabinet where a minister will say to the Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister, I don't agree. Or there is an issue, and he will speak to the issue as the minister. But he fails to do that. These are the advice, as referred to in the advice. Political officials feel able to provide frank advice. A permanent secretary, the minister comes to you. I saw in one of the audit report, I think it was I don't remember the exact date, but two or three budgets before, where the Public Works Department gave medical assistance to a citizen of Dominican to travel for medical assistance. The Public Works Department, not the Ministry of Health. And the audit raised that and queried it as being inappropriate. So the question remains, the permanent secretary as the accounting officer of this ministry, or if you take it one step lower, the accounting clerk, the votes clerk, whoever was aware of making that payment, because the payment was made, couldn't you have seen and said, no, Mr. Minister, you might want to help your person from your constituency, but we can't make that payment from that vote. But he went ahead and did it. I shared with you a while back a World Bank report that was prepared on the debt, the management of debt in the public service, and how crazy that was. There were decisions that were taken as it relates to spending that had required parliamentary approval, that occurred without parliamentary approval. We see currently the budget is being passed or introduced in the House on the 4th of August, well past the prescribed time for a budget. Independent institutions operate without fear or favor. Again, we're looking at the institution and the ministers as the advisor. Public resources are managed transparently and accountable. This is one of the issues that Gregor raised in his letter, that several of this project have not received planning approval. I just got a copy last evening of the budget, the current budget address. And that is something we can take a look at some subsequent program. And it seems to me that it was just an AI-generated budget, or GPT, or whatever they call it.
So again, it goes back to the point of people thinking that there's a competent government in place, when in fact the government that's in place in Dominica terms is just cautioning.
Exactly.
If something as important as a budget seems to be AI generated,
that's my opinion.
No, but I'm saying
the way it's written, when you
the
read
way it's
it,
written, and so many things that come out now seem to be that. It just means that the government is cautioning.
exactly.
And somebody has to stand up like that child and say, hey.
And I'm coming to that. I'm coming to the crowd.
No, but we have to also watch the time. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm coming quickly to the crowd.
So we have to be able to say who's going to stand up and say the emperor is naked, the government is cautioning, and who's going to, once that is said, protect that person for speaking up.
Well, I'm going to come to that and conclude. But let me say in terms of the crowd, and the crowd symbolizes society's willingness to remain silent despite private doubt. That's one of the major issues back home. Reasons may include fear of victimization, political tribalism, economic dependence. They have to walk up the ministry step on the red clinic every whatever day, social pressure, or resignation that speaking out will make no difference. Some people say, well, boy, even if you say anything, nothing will happen. And let's come to the child, a major character in the story as well. The child represents independent voices. And that is where the people like the Brisbane comes in, the Janelle Brisbane, the August young man, the Afi Martez, the Gregor Nassif, citizens, journalists, TDN radio as we're doing now, academics, civil society organization, churches, trade unions, the judiciary. I just saw the matter was brought to the court, challenging the president's constitutional authority to appoint the leader of the opposition, and the court ruled that it was unconstitutional what she did. Okay? Who are willing to state uncomfortable truth based on evidence rather than political convenience. So exactly what we're doing here tonight. We are speaking the truth to power. And some people may get offended and say, yes, Alvin again, bashing the government. Yes, Tony again. But these are the realities. And that the allegory suggests that meaningful accountability often begins with those willing to ask simple questions. Where did the money go? CBI. How much money was spent on geothermal? What is the contract for the marina? Was due process follow the roof of the grammar school? What evidence support this decision that we should go in Deboash and dig up Deboash? Has the policy delivered the promised results? That is where it comes in. And lessons for the Commonwealth of Dominica applied to the Dominica. The fabric can serve as a broad reflection on democratic governance rather than an accusation against any particular individual, because that is not what we are here for. We're not there to simply accuse, but we're saying there must be a proper forum, a proper democratic forum. And therefore, that in itself should invite citizens and those listening to the program tonight and viewing to consider whether transparency is replacing secrecy. Is that what we have? Institutions are sufficiently independent. The IPO, the Electoral Commission, Parliament exercises effective oversight of the executive. We have a situation where the executive and the Parliament is like one of the same. They go in there and the eyes have it, and that's it. Procurement processes are fair and competitive. Was there a proper procurement procedure for all of these major projects that have been undertaken? Public spending is adequately. What of the public spending? The airport. Media and civil society can operate without intimidation. So what are the real dangers now, Tony, as I conclude? The central lesson of the emperor's new clothes is not simple that one leader can become detached from reality. It is that an entire system can begin to reward conformity and discourage honesty. That is one of
Repeat that, Alvin. I think that is profound.
The central lesson of the emperor's new clothes is not simply that one leader can become detached from reality. It is that an entire system can begin to reward conformity and discourage honesty. So that's how it is. When institutions stop challenging questionable decisions, errors become normalized. So it's okay. That's how we do it.
You know, I mean, stick up in there. You know, that is so important because the video we watched, at least it showed the emperor had some shame.
Yes.
When he realized he jumped off,
exactly,
and he ran back to his place.
He ran back to his home.
But
yes.
in the original story, even after the emperor is exposed, his pride prevented him from admitting.
That's
and
right.
He continued walking in his parade, and his people continue to pretend that they were holding up a train.
That's right.
To follow
That's
him.
right.
So that is so important when you talk about stuff becoming normalized and
That's
being
right.
accepted.
Normalized stuff.
Even when it is obvious that the government is a cautioning, it can become normal when the supporters continue to support and they continue with business as usual.
Yeah. So therefore, when institutions stop challenging questionable decisions, errors become normalized. Policies are praised regardless of results, and we see it all the time. Public confidence declines because accountability weakens. We see it happening in the Electoral Commission. The lack of public confidence because there is no accountability coming from the Chief Election Officer. The greatest danger, therefore, is not the emperor's vanity, but silence of those who know better. Okay? Those who know better. So let me end by saying what would be the positive democratic message coming out of that story. The story offers hope, and I always express that on this program. Notwithstanding where we are today, I'm a man of hope. Okay? Change begins when citizens value truth over fear. You hear what I just said? Change begins when citizens value truth over fear. And that is something we have to repeatedly instill in our fellow Dominicans back home and those in the diaspora. For any democracy, including Dominica, the antidotes to the emperor's new clothes syndromes are: one, strong constitutional institution. So we have to have the IPO to effectively operate as an IPO. The planning division, that when the planning division issue a stop order, to ensure that the stop order has effect. And if people fail to abide by the stop order, then the board, the entire board should resign. An independent judiciary, that is so critical. Because once people lose faith in the judiciary, then it becomes hallmarks. A professional and politically neutral public service. Those permanent secretaries, you heard the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, a man by the name of Sevre, was challenging Janelle on whether they have a right to question what's going on at Deboash. A free and responsible press. The press has to do a little more themselves. They can't remain silent. And that also extends to the trade unions. A transparent public procurement. So we know exactly what's going on in the tram. How much money has been spent? What is the contract? Who's getting what? The geothermal, the marina. Robust parliamentary oversight, effective anti-corruption mechanism. And that is where the IPO comes in again. So the IPO can be a watchdog and say, well, how did you accumulate all that wealth? Active civil society. Okay? Civil society must remain active and an informed and engaged electorate. Okay? And I will conclude by saying a useful adaptation of Anderson's moral for modern democratic governance read, and I'll quote, "A nation is strongest not when its leaders never make mistakes, but when its institutions allow those mistakes to be identified, corrected, and openly debated. Democracy flourishes when citizens are free to speak the truth. Institutions have the courage to uphold the rule of law, and those entrusted with public office are accountable to the people they serve." And this is the message coming from this Emperor's New Clothes. I close with that, Tony.
Alvin, thank you so much for that great analysis and really, the analogies that you came up with, and really painting it in a system and an institutional background. My complimentary conclusion is that as citizens, let us speak our truth. If you see the emperor has no clothes, don't be afraid to be wrong. It's better you say, but I cannot see the clothes, and somebody else lend you their glasses, or somebody else take a photo with their phone and show it to you, and you realize that there is in fact clothes. But if you cannot see the clothes, don't pretend that you're seeing nice shoes and pants and so on. And so the point I am making is that
True.
if you see that the projects in Dominica are not resulting after 26 years in the betterment of life in Dominica. The other day they run and say they did some successful cardiac surgery. What does that mean? Does that mean that our healthcare system has so improved that we will not see a GoFundMe for the next person that has any type of serious procedure that they need? What does that mean? Is that just a headline that they can use to because there's supposed to be a by-election in the constituency where the hospital is? So let us understand that when we see a truth, we speak a truth. And that is why I am speaking naked tonight with no gloves. I am the emperor tonight that has no clothes. And I'm saying that if you look at the performance of the government for the last 26 years, you will agree with me that what they've been doing is largely cautioning, and that we have a leader who is so vain that he is easy to manipulate when somebody strokes his ego. And he will travel to lands and, and societies that are much more sophisticated. They've existed for so much longer than Dominica. They have they have so much more experience because they've been administering so much more resources than just what Dominica has. And so it is easy to flatter the prime minister of Dominica because he seems to be impressed by Italian suits and Armani shoes and all of these trappings of vanity that if someone were to stroke his ego, it would be easy to manipulate him. And we see that happening. We see that even the close relationship that he had with the managers of MNC is now devolving, and MMC is taking the government to court, right? We see all of those break apart with range development and people suing the government for their share of Dominican money that Dominicans haven't seen. We see what's happening in Debonche. We see what's happening in the airport. Every time we have a major rain event, it turns into a swimming pool, and we don't know how much money it has been spent, how much money still has to be spent, or how much time is left. We don't even have a good idea as to what the airport is going to look like when it's done because there are no plans available for what they are building. If you look at all of those things with the geothermal, if you look at the hotel, the Kipinski within 6 months had to give up and change their name, and some other hotel chain had to come and take over. The Moroccan one that is just sitting there as a white elephant. You will agree, maybe reluctantly, because traditionally your family is a Labour Party supporting family. And so you think that you have an obligation to continue to support the Labour Party. But maybe if you go back and you look at the history of the Labour Party, you will tell yourself that what is operating right now in government is not the Labour Party and is not true to the founding principles of the Labour Party. You have to be able to look at those things and tell yourself that what those guys doing is cautioning. How do you mean that a government signs a contract that gives somebody a lease for land or best for 999 years? I mean, anyhow you spin it, it's cautioning. Whether they did it and that's what they intended to do is bad. And if it's true that it was an error, but they signed it without realizing the error, that's even more bad. So so I mean,
Or the child would say badder.
the better. So the reality is that if you look at the truth, these guys are just dripping with incompetence. And so we have an election coming. I saw today that somebody is doing a calculation that the Rosanov by election requires that it be done before the 16th of September. That is like 1 month away, and it doesn't seem like that is going to happen. And therefore, what they might do is dissolve Parliament before the 16th and call an election before the end of the year. If that happens, people, please remember this story. And if the emperor, after he realizes his mistake, doesn't have his own shame to run away, he continues to pretend. Let us be the one to dispatch him. Don't vote for that caution here another time. Dominica cannot take a continued existence under that incompetent government.
Yeah.
Everywhere you turn, it's just bundling, it's just errors, and so it makes us look bad because a government is from the people. A government is from the people. A government is a reflection. Our government in Dominica is a reflection of us as Dominicans. And if our government is doing cautioning, it means that we are people of cautioning, but we know that we are not people of cautioning. So let us vote this government out of office so that Dominica can have a chance to get back on track, and we can protect our rivers, we can protect our forests, we can protect our environment, we can reignite our economy, we can give our young people some hope so that all of this violence and drugs and crime can start to diminish because our people can look forward with hope. Let the prime minister dissolve the house. Let him call an election. Let him spend the money going around giving people treats to vote for him. But when you go to the poll, remember your child and your grandchild, and don't put your ex next to that shoe. Because if you're doing that, you are just like the people who see a naked emperor and telling him, "Oh boy, that's some nice digs, eh? Your jacket is have style, nice shoes, nice this." I want in truth and in fact, you don't see anything. So
Yeah.
I repeat, my conclusion and my lesson looking forward is to recognize the incompetence that exists and commit to putting Dominica first and vote somebody else in. And even if you like the candidate, even if you're from a constituency, you say you're from the constituency and you feel like your constituency got something under the government, just because they're part of this incompetence, do not vote for them, vote for somebody else. Take them out, let them go on the sidelines and recalculate, and then they can come back again after a while. It's no problem. But the current incumbent government in Dominica needs to change. Otherwise, we will go over the brink and we will not be able to pull our country back and have something to leave behind for our children and our grandchildren.
Well, well said, Tony. Let me just quickly though, as you reference the upcoming by-election in Roseau North, and to say to your listeners and yourself, the Constitution at section 55(3), 55 subsection 3, that deals with holding of election, reads, section 3, where the seat of a representative or senator falls vacant otherwise than by reason of a dissolution of the House. A, if the vacant seat is that of a representative, a by-election shall be held. B, if the vacant seat is that of a senator who has been appointed, an appointment shall be made. Or C, if the vacant seat is that of a senator who has been elected, such electoral proceeding as may be prescribed shall be taken. To fill the vacancy within 3 months of the occurrence of the vacancy, unless the House is sooner dissolved.
Right.
So that is the authority right there under the Constitution, section 55(3) of our Constitution. Now, the vacancy takes effect once the Speaker of the House accepts that resignation. Okay? not necessarily the date of the letter. So say, for example, Ms. Blanchard had dated the letter 1st of June, but the Speaker of the House only received it on the 15th of June. That is when it takes effect, on the 15th of June, not the 1st
Right.
of June. So whenever that date happened in June or whatever it is, if we say June the 15th, for just purposes of
I think it's June the 16th. I believe it's
16th.
June the 16th.
So we're looking at September the 16th.
September the 16th, a month
Okay?
away. 4 weeks
Unless
from
the
now.
House, as they say, unless the House is sooner dissolved.
Right.
So let me just conclude very quickly, Tony, to say that we started out by saying that story goes back almost 200 years. But the story of itself, the Emperor New Clothes, becomes a timeless reminder, even after 187 years since that story was told, that good governance depends not only on the character of the leader, but also the willingness of institution, and I cannot underscore that more, the willingness of institution and citizens. And you reference that when you call on citizens to do the right thing. Citizens alike to value truth. So the first thing, we have to value truth. We have to be honest and value truth, okay? Transparency and accountability over appearance. So these are the three things as citizens we have to take note of. Value truth, transparency, and accountability over appearance. And if we can do that, I think we can put ourselves in a better place than where we are today.
And so with that, what I would say is what I've been doing every week is to encourage folks to go and get reconfirmed on the voters list so that when the election is called, you can vote. Please, 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 I implore you to go and get reconfirmed so that when the election calls and you want to expose a naked emperor, you have the opportunity to do so. If you don't go and reconfirm, you will show up at the polling station and they're hoping that you do not reconfirm. They're hoping that you do not reconfirm so that you don't have a chance, that even if you recognize, and those of you who recognize that what is passing for government in Dominica is, like you say in Dominica, no boyo, it's just pie. It's just a straw man that's standing there pretending to be a government. There are no bowels, there are no organs, there's no functionality. It's just a scarecrow. And you can see that because anybody who has a pulse, anybody who, if you put a mirror under their nose, you will see it fog to show that they're breathing. Any child, my mother used to have a preschool, they used to call it Minok preschool, Legion Minok, a preschool. Any child from that school would recognize that you cannot sign a contract for 999 years. You cannot sign a contract. It's like, and that is a contract for a tramway that's traveling miles through our forest.
No. It's in a UNESCO designated area.
Yeah, and
That's where
passing
it's built.
and passing over
Yeah,
the
in a
falls,
designated
the
area.
freshwater lake, the
UNESCO.
boiling lake, and all of that.
So that's why it's important.
You cannot sign that away for 999 years. That's an error that cannot happen. And even if you give it for 99 years, it's too much.
As
It is
Vic,
way too much.
as the late Vic Rivera would have said, that is a fundamental error.
As clear as
Fundamentally wrong.
as clear as crystal water. You know.
But
So
what we need to do though, quickly, Tony, as well, and in light of what you've just raised, we need to do something on the current budget, because that is the budget leading to the elections. That's an supposedly, quote unquote, an election budget. But it's like an emperor without clothes.
I don't see it being an election, because if by logic, the mathematical logic, that election, the House is going to be dissolved before September 16th, the budget will not have time to take effect.
Well, it should, because it shouldn't last more than a week or two in Parliament. It had already late in August.
No,
that's
okay.
You can't drag it out, because
but
it's supposed to
but
take
but,
effect
but the
from
point is the point is that if we recognize, and the truth is that we don't need we don't need labor rights to vote against the government. If enough people understand, enough people who already understand, because they are not supporters of the Labour Party, if all of them register to vote and go to vote, we will have a change.
But
And don't vote a candidate because you like a candidate. Vote against the current government. The mistake that we make is that we think we have to convince everybody to come along. What we need is for a common cause on the other side to have a movement.
Yeah.
And,
but
and
I would also want to say there as well, Tony, that even in our messaging and our language, I don't even want to maybe go down the road of a tribalism, labor right, freedomite, ULPI. I think where we are now, Dominicans with truth, and any Dominican that is prepared to speak truth, given that emperor new clothes, as I said earlier, truth, honesty, should recognize that the administration we have has not served us well as they should over the last 25 years.
And that's the truth.
And that appeal is made across the board.
Right.
To every Dominican citizen, irrespective of what political affiliation you may have. Let us examine truth. Let's face truth, add truth in our face, and ask the questions that I asked earlier. Is there accountability? Is there transparency? Is there this? And if the answer to those questions is no, then you have an obligation to exercise that value of truth, transparency, and accountability, and do what is right as a citizen of the
citizen. And what is right is to get rid of this government. I'm not afraid to say it. And folks, that is what I'm appealing to you to go and get yourself reconfirmed, get ready to vote. And when the bell rings, stand up and start to head to the polling station and vote for a change in Dominica. And the people who are putting up themselves for as candidates, I would like to see you come together under one common truth and give the people one thing to vote for against what exists right now. That strawman, that scarecrow, that Koshoni that has been destroying the country and resulting in so much despair. Dominica imports water. And doesn't export a single bottle.
Mention was not made of that in the budget address.
Exactly. So I mean,
nada. Nothing.
We can sit down here and we can talk till tomorrow morning, and we will not run out of things to list that demonstrate the incompetence and the failure of the current government. So you cannot vote for them. You cannot vote for them. And so, folks, that's all. That's what I have to say tonight. And Alvin, thank you for coming on. And I hope I don't get into trouble by calling people Koshoni.
No.
That's what this story is about. It's about calling out the truth.
Sometimes again, when you raise up with old folks or generation like myself, that is how they refer to it in a colloquial way. That's where you hear it. When somebody tell you Koshoni, you kind of step back a bit and say, I know what he's saying. You hear. But if I say nonsense, that might sound a little intelligent. The emperor said, don't use intelligent words like that.
No, but if I wasn't Dominican, I wouldn't have a word to describe what the people doing, because I think caution is a Dominican word.
Yeah, I know.
Have a special meaning.
I agree.
How else can you describe what has happened? And every story is worse than the last one. So what is going to top this one?
And then you have, again, if we relate the emperor story, you have an advisor. I presume he would be an advisor. After the 999 year list was disclosed, comes wrong again and say, well, why didn't Gregor said it was amended from 999 to 99? You see what I'm talking about? You see that distortion? of the truth again? That is what a advisors come in and say, you know. So put aside, forget it, because like you said, first of all, cabinet would have had to take a decision. The document would have to be printed
comment
and
again,
approved.
please.
So if you
From
do
Ron Joseph.
999, and then now that person who don't want to get the emperor vexed, he's saying, well, no, you know what? Yeah, it must have been 999, 999, but we amended it to 99 years. You see what I'm saying? That truth again. That truth, that accountability, that transparency.
When is the end of the fiscal year? Is it June 30th?
Yeah, June 30th. July 1st to 30th of June.
So you see someone put a comment. I wanted Sam to put it back up. That's saying that they're allowed to present the budget up to 45 days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
After the close of the fiscal year. And
yeah,
so,
but you see, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can respond.
No, what I want Ron Joseph to tell me, quote the relevant section for me. Quote me the section. Don't only put it up like that. Quote me the exact section. And then let's do an interpretation of the section. So don't tell me the Finance Act allows the minister to present. Quote me the relevant section in the Finance Act that speaks to that. And then I will take you one step further. This government has been in office for 24, 25 years.
26 years, in 2000.
You had the Freedom Party in office for 15 years. You had the United Workers' Party in office for 4.5 years. Let's look at the precedents over the last several years. So I'm not even putting Patrick John administration in there because he only served 1 year as prime minister. 78 to 79, he was out. He didn't even do 2 years as prime minister. Okay? But let's take Eugenia Charles from 1980 to 1995, 15 years in office. Let's take the United Workers' Party. And even this current 26-year Labour Party, well over that extended period, a budget has gone to that extent. Quote me the relevant section in the Finance Act. And I will go back and say, based on precedent, do you consider that to the right thing to do? Forget, and that is where, again, you have to understand the spirit and the intention of any legislation. But in order for us to have a civil conversation, quote me the section, Mr. Joseph, and let's engage in a discussion. I'll be happy to look at it and engage and either agree or disagree with you. But don't just put a blanket statement on the screen and feel, well, you have accomplished something. You haven't really accomplished
it. As a member of the audience, he has a right to make a comment.
No, he has a right. But I'm challenging him now. I'm challenging him to put the relevant section for me.
But the point about it is that whether it's within the Constitution or not to present it, I haven't seen it, right? But my whole point in terms of the budget, I have two things in terms of the budget. The government presents a budget that's almost $1 billion. I don't know what it is this year.
It's $1.24 billion.
Right.
No, now, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1.2.
No, when you look at Dominica, Alvin, and people might think I'm naive, I don't know what I'm talking about, but when you look at Dominica has one hospital, a couple, maybe 3 or 4 large health centers, 200 miles of road. How many schools? I don't know, 20 schools with few students. Where in Dominica are you spending $1 billion? That you have a budget that's $1 billion year after year after year after year after year. And that is a problem that I have. If the budget is supposed to be a serious document, not just an exercise where you present a budget, where in Dominica are we spending $1 billion? And if we spend, and if we're spending $1 billion in Dominica every year, how is that reflected in the quality of life? I saw they had a video of the opening of Parliament, and I had to bow my head in shame when I see the condition of the gutters in Roseau, and the things that anybody can, if you're not looking, your food go down in there, you could break it, potholes and all kind of thing. You're spending $1 billion, $1 billion, $1 billion. At what point do you run out of things to do in a small country like Dominica with so little things to do? Those are the questions when we come to discuss the budget. Those are the things I want to discuss. But
no, well,
you're
right. You're absolutely right. And let's break it down for the average Dominican citizen to understand, because there's those of us who do budget on an individual basis. I do one at my house. I'm sure maybe you do one, Tony. You do a budget, your monthly budget, what you're going to spend on to pay your mortgage, your lights, your power, your insurance, blah, 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 how much money you have coming in, and all that good stuff, okay? If you apply to the bank for a loan, the bank is going to tell you, present to them a budget. So you're going to show what kind of income comes in and what kind of expenditure. And the point that you're raising is so right. What does the expenditure looks like? Okay? What does the expenditure looks like? So, for example, the prime minister in that budget
don't get trapped into discussing the budget. Eh?
No, I don't want to.
Do this one point. Do this one point, and let's move on. Okay?
No. I agree. But the point I'm saying is that you can have what is called an inflated budget. Okay? An inflated budget is one of the areas that leads to corruption. Because if you take, for example, a particular ministry and you allocate to that ministry a certain amount of monies for specific projects, and as we discussed in the Emperor's New Clothes, these projects do not live and show up with accountability and transparency. It is easy to swindle monies under those projects. So that is where the $1.2 billion go. Because at the same time that is happening, you have a public debt that is $1.6 billion. A public debt, a debt. That means money the government owes to various institutions and organizations. And you have a debt to GDP ratio of 90% in the last financial year, 2025-26. A debt to GDP ratio. That means for every dollar that you collect, you have to allocate some 90% of your GDP to service that debt. So you see where the problem is.
Yeah,
but
so
we can discuss that in
we'll discuss the budget, and when we do that, I'll invite Ron to come on.
That would make for an interesting conversation.
When I say come on, either in the audience or whatever, but he told you what the section is, and so we can go into more detail, because the more of those types of discussions that we have, is the more educated my audience becomes, and I want my audience to be the most educated audience on social media. So Ron, I thank you for those comments. I'm not unleashing Alvin, because we will be here till 10 p.m. We will have a session on the budget. Tonight's program, I think, was a really good. It lived up to my expectation of.
I'm happy it did.
Of where we have a caricature of power.
Yeah.
And I mean, I picked on the prime minister, but it also applies to the government as a whole. It applies to the various and different aspects of Dominican life, where people become larger than life, and their ego becomes such that it becomes a tool to be able to manipulate them. And once they're manipulated, and they have already created an environment around them where people feel that they have a lot to lose if they speak the truth. That's the other aspect. People have their own selfish self-interest. And
they have become numb.
Well, not even that. They see a benefit in telling the person what they want to hear, right? because they
Right.
see this, they'll get a trip, they'll get gifts, they'll get whatever benefits that they get. And so once that becomes that, is as though you already have a fish that's rotting in, and you introduce you know, some kind of lava in the head, and then it just starts to spawn worms throughout the entire body of the fish. And until somebody can come and recognize it and put some, I don't know, Dettol or J's or something on there to kill the worms, it's just going to continue to fester. And so people, the idea about tonight's program is to first of all recognize the illusions, right? As Dizzy Easter pointed out a couple of times, recognize the illusions and then make an honest decision to speak your truth. Don't be afraid to be wrong, because maybe it's there and you just cannot see it. But if you point out you don't see it, somebody might show you how to see it. Don't
Yep.
just go along to get along. But when you recognize the truth, let's get back to that point where we value truth. And that's all I have for tonight. It's 9:30. I'm going to release the audience. Alvin, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for your
Pleasure,
wonderful
as always.
contribution as usual. We need to do that more often. You know, in grammar, I mean, we look at both in grammar school. I used to be the number one literature student in grammar school. You know,
Really?
with Shakespeare and Thomas Hardy and
Yeah.
V.S. Naipaul and all of those great
I mean, I
literary
did it
works.
in SMA. It was my forte, but
It
I
was
did
my
it.
favorite subject in grammar school, even if I was a science student.
Yeah. Yeah.
I people like Arundel Thomas
Yeah.
taught me, and there was an old man, Mr. Robbo. I think he was
Yeah.
originally from Marigot. Introduced
Anthony
me.
Lockhart. Anthony Lockhart was
He was the
also.
principal,
Yeah.
but my English literature teachers,
Okay.
Mr. Robinson,
Right.
Old Man
Right.
Robinson, Arundel Thomas, Miss Mona Harris,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
else? And I just really had a really good
But it.
soaking
Yeah.
in English literature,
Yeah.
and so all of these skills I learned from grammar school.
Yeah. But it's interesting because there's this other fable called the Animal Farm that I'm sure you're familiar
Yeah.
with. It's another one that speaks to this political situation, Animal Farm.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Dice has this popular song on it.
Right.
You know, the animals on the farm and how leadership and democracy is
And
exercised.
the whole interaction
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of that.
So it's,
You know,
yeah.
it's very interesting to use literature to really show up on to because people understand the stories.
Yeah,
And when you can relate it, it probably enlightens them. And what I would say is that we have to be more tolerant
exactly.
of the folks
Each other. Yeah.
who have a different opinion from us.
That's right.
Because that person is just as convinced that they are right as you are convinced that you are right.
Absolutely.
And so it takes for open discussion,
Absolutely.
strong discussion. We understand to respect each other. And if I say the government is cautioning and a supporter of the government can tell me, well, you say it's cautioning, but that's the best we have. Who else? I mean, it's as they used to say, if not CBI, then where would the money come from? But the CBI is disappearing. But Alvin, again, thank you, and let's do this again. Let's plan during the month of August. So maybe next week I usually have Adrian doing the green agriculture, green MAGA.
Well,
on the second Wednesday, maybe the third Wednesday we will do
discussion because a lot can be applied in the budget as well.
In the budget, right? No, definitely.
Yeah, as far as it relates to agriculture.
Yeah. So, folks, good night. Thank you for staying with us. I'm going to liberate you from Alvin because he's trying to keep you there until midnight. But
when the discussion is stimulating like that, man,
you don't want to go. Exactly.
I guess you have guests like Ron as part of the discussion. I'm sure Ron is still there with us.
And Didi and
but
Owen.
I really love to have an engagement and discussion with Ron at some point. You know, maybe we can bring him on as a
if
guest.
He's willing. I don't know who he is. So if he's willing,
he could indicate that. We can have a nice
and maybe he just pointed out for educational purposes. But Ron seems to be engaged.
Yeah, let me see what he put there. Yeah.
That's exactly what
Until
I
the
was going to
repeal
say,
and
Ron. On the government's finance administration.
repeal layers with revenue that are no later than 40 days financial year. If you like, I can provide more details on the exact wording of section of provisional interim spending work if the budget president delay further recent national. Okay. All right, Ron. Thanks for that information. But we can
no, it's important to read this last one.
oh yeah, it
This
doesn't mean
doesn't
that I
mean that I
support the
support the
nonsense
cautioning.
taking place.
Ron, can I
Cautioning.
replace your nonsense with
Nonsense
cautioning?
is the high-tech word for the academics like you. But for the local layman like me, I use cautioning.
Not only that, we have listeners who are not Dominicans, and they don't know the Creole.
But no,
So,
it's good that Ron made that comment, and which is true, you know. And again, that's why I said if we could have a little engagement and discussion, because sometimes you another great program. Thank you, Dragon.
Thank
yeah,
you,
sometimes too, the interpretation of a section may not be read as direct as we read it, and that's why matters are brought before the court. And like I referenced earlier, the president of the country felt that under the Constitution, she could not appoint a leader of the opposition. And her side, which is the Attorney General and Senior Counsel Stefan, went to court and tried to show under the Constitution, based on whatever section they provided, that she could not. The other side presented otherwise, and the court ruled it was unconstitutional. So while it might be true that Section 21(1) talks about the 45 days, but in the spirit of it,
we will adjudicate that at another time, right? I don't know how many times Mr. Astafans has to lose before he loses the senior counsel title, but that's a discussion for another time. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying.
But no, it was a good evening.
A wonderful
I enjoyed
discussion.
it as usual, and I look forward for us to engaging again sometime in the future. And thanks to the guests and the questions and the interaction.
Yeah,
I think that makes it even more interesting.
Let's maybe tentatively pencil in for the third Wednesday in August to talk about the budget.
Sure, no problem.
Wednesday.
All right, Tony, take care.
All right, thank you so much, Alvin, and thanks again.
All right,
all right, listeners, thank you for staying this late. But the discussion is an interesting discussion. The emperor is naked, and not even he believes his eyes, because he's told that he is wearing garbs that only intelligent people can see, and he's afraid of being classified as unintelligent, and so he accepts that he's wearing clothes when he's not wearing clothes. So maybe the people who are doing the nonsense in our parliament really think that they're doing good. So it's up to us to point it out and have them take a second look. But folks, really and truly, it boils down to going to reconfirm. That's so important. If you are qualified to vote in Dominica, get reconfirmed. And when the election is called, go and vote for a change. Even if you like your government, give them a chance to get out of the pressure of having to run the day-to-day things, so they can go on the side, they can take a breath, they can regroup and come back in government. Because the kind of errors that they're making right now, the country cannot survive too many more of those, right? You know the geothermal, the well that's providing this hot water for the geothermal. It has a lifetime. It's not something that goes on to perpetuity. They have to keep drilling wells, and so when you give a company 25 years to run it, by the time 25 years is done, that well might not be producing anywhere close to its capacity anymore, right? And so even those are bad decisions. It's just yeah. I don't have any confirmation, but the fact that nobody is talking about our hydro plant, it worries me, because in that whole discussion of island-wide blackout and continuous power failures, we hear about the generators in Fokole, we hear about the generators on Sugarloaf Estate, but we hear nothing about our hydro plants at Padu. And so, what is the purpose of that? I know there was a lot of warning about the geology of Dominica. When you start to drill for the geothermal, you're going to affect water levels and water flows. I pray that's not what's going on, that the flow to the hydro plant is so diminished that we don't get, the contribution is no longer significant. But again, no, elections have consequences. Let us vote for a different government the next time there's a general election. Let's see if we can get a different outcome for Dominica. So, folks, I wish everyone a wonderful remainder of the week. We'll do this again next week, Wednesday, when we meet and congregate for another lively discussion on this weekend interview. Thank you so much for staying on. Good night.